The lines are blurring between culture and economics. Arbitrum is seeing insane volume and has made massive waves since its launch. And what threat does regulation pose to the crypto industry? All this and more on... I'm Luke, and this is TLDR, where we catch you up on all the headlines and important narratives from around Bankless this week. As always, there are going to be links down in the show notes so you can do a deeper dive into any of these topics. Before we get started, I want to quickly shout out our sponsor SoRare, which is DeFi's biggest platform for collecting, trading, and playing fantasy soccer. So if you're a Top Shots person or a fantasy sports person, then this app is for you. Check it out at the link in the show notes to get started. So Brian Quintens came on the podcast this week to talk about regulation from the commodity side of things. And the takeaways here are simple. We live in a heavily gated financial system that is generally trending in the direction of more surveillance, more oversight, more red tape. Crypto is a response to this in many ways. First, it's a fundamental rejection of this top-down oversight. Crypto reshapes what privacy means, and it also reshapes what transparency means. It's also a response to the inherent inefficiencies that come along with human-powered governance systems. Humans are messy creatures, and the more legislation and the more bureaucracy we have, this economic game that we're all playing becomes increasingly complicated and difficult to navigate. Crypto leverages the power of the internet to go in the opposite direction, and Brian very bluntly states that we need to let DeFi run, and run now, and run fast, from an economic perspective and from a national security perspective.
Now, when you have a new financial paradigm that's been, rapidly and wonderfully developed in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years of DeFi, you have a different approach to risk management. You have a different view of counterparty exposure. You have a different view of what deserves protecting from a risk management perspective, and whether or not protocols that have more open source code that can be viewed and are actually probably much more transparent than the changing margining process of the legacy clearinghouses. That's just a completely different dynamic. And right now, the law in our rule set says if you trade a futures contract, it has to be done on a registered exchange and cleared through a clearinghouse. Well, maybe before we start punitively going after DeFi developers and market participants that aren't complaining about anything, we should think whether or not that's the right approach, for this kind of market.
Until now, Brian was a commissioner for the CFTC, the governing body over commodities and futures derivatives. And since we recorded the podcast, he's now an advisor to A16Z, the Andreessen Horowitz crypto fund. And honestly, I worry that it's a bit of a loss because now, more than ever, we need regulators who are open-minded to innovation and to movements that can change paradigms. We are at an inflection point in society, and now is the time to be flexible and progressive and not rely on arbitrary or outdated rules. This, of course, comes on the heels of the SEC cracking down on UNISWAP and Coinbase. You can watch the weekly roll-up for a deep dive into these ongoing events, but my take is that this regulatory squeeze is not so great. Crypto's attention should be out on the frontier of innovation where it can garner momentum and adoption. Not behind mountains of paperwork, red tape, and possibly courtrooms. Cathie Wood has a much different and more optimistic take on all this, and I'd rather you take her word over mine, so watch the podcast with her, Chris Berniski, and Yassine from ARK Invest, and that will be dropping this week. So last week was Labor Day, and while many were taking the day off, David offered a good reminder in the Market Monday post that Ethereum is always online, 24/7. Society never turns off, so neither should our economy or our markets. Current markets are operational only 20% of the time. This seems like an insufficient degree of uptime for, the center of the economy. Crypto is poised to reconcile the bubbles of the economy and culture, or work and leisure, making them complementary rather than segregated. And a lot of that comes through Layer Zero, the people. And in this week's episode of Layer Zero, Justin Drake came on and told the story of coining the ultrasound money meme. Justin is a great example of this new breed of individual. On one hand, he's worked on deep, objective, technical issues as a core developer and researcher for Ethereum, but now he's shifted gears to taking deep dives into the human element of all of this. His work is multifaceted and flexible and emblematic of the cohesive and holistic nature of the crypto space. And when you take that holistic approach and scale it from the individual to an entire group, well, you get a DAO. DAOs leverage the technology and the culture of the internet to coordinate. And when people can rally around a particular goal and have the tooling to coordinate effectively, apes together strong. The Bankless and Gitcoin DAOs teamed up to run basically what is the first consensus of the DAO space, and the results are fascinating. So read the article, read the full report, and get an idea of what is really happening here, because I think that the scale of the DAO movement is vastly underrated. In other news, Arbitrum launched. We have talked about scaling endlessly, and it looks like it's finally here, and it's moving fast. Harry Kolodner and Stephen Goldfeder of Arbitrum came by on State of the Nation to talk about the launch and the rapid development of Arbitrum's optimistic rollup.
I wonder how long it'll be until most of these leaderboard candidates are actually layer 2s, right? I mean, because this is what we're talking about. This is the scalability roadmap for not just Arbitrum, but all of Ethereum. You might start your entire life as a user on a layer 2 and live there the entire time. But settle ultimately on top of Ethereum mainnet. I'm curious what you guys think. How long do you think that'll be before some layer 2, maybe Arbitrum, starts to rise up the charts in this burn leaderboard?
That's a great question. I would say definitely before the end of the year.
Wow.
In the last 7 days, Arbitrum has sucked in over $2 billion worth of value, and although that's not totally surprising, it has been awesome to see this take off. Especially as we've seen other Layer 1 smart contract platforms like Solana absolutely taking off. And it'll be interesting to watch how these two things compete for mindshare. We've raised this question before, but I think it will become increasingly clear over the next few months. Are other ETH killers competing with mainnet Ethereum or Layer 2 Ethereum rollups like Arbitrum or Optimism? We'll see. If gas prices have been frustrating you or you have doubts about Ethereum's ability to scale, well, check out the guide to Arbitrum that we published this week. And spoiler alert, Arbitrum is fast, and it works. Finally, our tactic this week covered wallet management. Knowing your way around a crypto wallet is a fundamental skill to going bankless, and it's really your portal to accessing this crazy world of DeFi. And that's just today. Looking down the line, your wallet can and will likely be so much more. Your resume, your identity, your token to the metaverse. But step one is getting the basics down, like the primitive tools of maintenance and security. Familiarizing yourself with these will surely be of help as wallets continue to increase in features and integrations. So my final thought for this week is that a handful of subjects seem to come up over and over and over again, and it's become clear that there are overarching themes in the crypto space that are always relevant. Although we talk about all sorts of different things, they all seem to boil down to discussing culture or technology or society more broadly. For culture, it's things like the metaverse or NFTs or DAOs or memes. For technology, EIP 1559, rollups, proof of stake. And for society more broadly, it's regulation, it's markets, or macro big picture stuff. These things are always changing, but if you pay attention, you can see these recurring themes. And if you put them into perspective over time, you can see narratives form and play out. Building narratives out of this constantly changing and complicated ecosystem is the best way to make sense of it. And it can give you insights and experience to know what to make of the next big narrative that comes along. So as you consume crypto content, or content in general, I guess, always work to find the through lines and build a mental model for what's really going on. Because all of the information is out there, way too much information, honestly, but it's only you that can get a meaning out of it. So with that maybe corny final thought, none of this was financial advice. ETH is risky, DeFi is risky, but we're headed west. It's the frontier. It's not for everyone, but we are glad you are with us on the Bankless journey. And I want to quickly shout out our sponsors, GEMINI, AAVE, Balancer, and UNISWAP. It's cool that our sponsors play big roles in these recurring themes, and we're happy to sponsor them. So thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, head over to Bankless HQ right now to develop your crypto investing skills and learn how to free yourself from banks and gain your financial independence. We recommend joining our daily newsletter, podcast, and community as a Bankless Premium subscriber to get the most out of your Bankless experience. You'll get access to our market analysis, our alpha leaks, and exclusive content, and even the Bankless token for airdrops, raffles, and unlocks. If you're interested in crypto, the Bankless community is where you want to be. Click the link in the description to become a Bankless Premium subscriber today. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for in-depth interviews with industry leaders, Ask Me Anythings, and weekly roll-ups where we summarize the week in crypto and other fantastic content. Thanks everyone for watching and being on the journey as we build out the Bankless Nation.